They locked the wrong thing in the cell. Steel can hold a man, but not what the moon remembers. And tonight, the moon remembers everything. You're listening to whispering narratives where the dark speaks first, and we stay long enough to hear what it has to say. If you can still breathe by the end of this story, subscribe before the next red moon. Because what we tell here doesn't stay here. This one begins in a prison built for monsters and ends with the walls confessing. My name doesn't matter, only the moon does, and she's coming. They said the walls were reinforced steel. They said no one could break out. They said a door is a fact. But they didn't build this place for what wakes when the sky turns red and remembers my name. Bleach, rust, the rubber paint that traps last week's breath and makes it live here forever. The cot spring gives a tiny noise whenever I shift, as if the bed is tattling to the camera. The camera blinks a red dot that wants to be a heartbeat but can't keep time. Above the cot, a slit of window grins its mean grin at my face. If I press my cheek to the cinder block and slide my eye along that knife edge, I can shave a sliver of sky from the night. Tonight the sky bleeds. Tonight the moon feeds by looking. I count. Numbers are fences you can build inside your head when the world forgets to give you any. 6 lower bolts, 6 upper. 2 chain anchors with the welder's tired initials scalded into steel. Someone's real name turned to heat and hardness. 3 smells I permit. Bleach, dust, iron. Anything beyond that opens a door. The sugar on a guard's gum, the oil in a slide, the bedroom sour under a uniform, the nickel tang of bullets that have rehearsed my name. Breathe slow. Keep the hands. Human. Palms down. Do not look at the slit. The heat finds me between the shoulder blades as if a brand I've always carried decides to glow. The air thickens until lungs are honey. Somewhere deep, marrow rolls and shows its soft belly to a voice older than my mother's. The guards outside have 2 kinds of silence. One is the silence of a man who prays because he doesn't want to be a coward. The other is the silence of a man who swallows words because he wants to be professional. Neither silence knows how to talk to the thing that climbs my bones. The first sound is a small respectable pop where wrist meets hand, as if courtesy files a brief before the riot begins. Another pop answers, then the gate swings. Knuckles push forward, nails creep like shy animals. The skin tightens to a shine like fruit about to burst. Seams declare themselves inadequate. Something deeper reaches through. Do not look at the slit. Look, the moon is not a coin. It is a wound that never scabs. Edged red, fat red. The kind of red that means a collector has climbed your stairs without knocking. My tongue swells against my teeth. The roof of my mouth sours and sweetens. The teeth thicken until the lips split and salt is permission. The chain sings to itself, high and thin and cold. I tell it to hush. It refuses. Back away from the door, the guard says, voice wearing a brave mask it doesn't own. I take 2 steps back because kindness is a habit I refuse to kill. The moon takes 3 steps forward because it is older than kindness and doesn't owe it anything. Pain used to be a fence that kept me on the human side. Tonight it is a door, and the hinges are oiled. The spine remembers. Each vertebra clicks into a shape it knew before language, and then language tries to follow and can't. Shoulders flood. Heat pours down my back like a ladle of iron. The cuffs bite, lift, bite deeper as hair rises and claims the wrist for a different owner. Smell mint on a guard's gum. The penny roll of his keys, the inherited fear that came down his family bone by bone and never lied to anyone. I want to tell him to run, but my throat chooses a vowel with teeth in it and puts a growl on the floor like a blade. If you're going to break, break beautifully. I raise my hands and the chain catches, slides, screams a single high note, and the anchor bolt remembers a payday afternoon when a welder wanted to get home and look at his sleeping child. The bolt moves, the chain stutters. The cuff on my left wrist laughs and lets go. The right refuses dignity for 3 heartbeats and joins its brother on the floor. The slit in the wall spills red down the cot like wine. My knees touch concrete without asking me. Breath hardens, vision sharpens, until I can read the weld seam in the door like a scar. Door, bolts, counted. Now count the breaths you have left. Steel is honest. It tells you where heat failed and hands shook. I set a paw, yes, paw against the door and test the seam with claws like surgical mistakes. One breath, one push, a long, ugly yes. Bolts snap like sugar glass. The alarm finds its throat and howls. Bullets bark down the corridor with their usual self-respect. They arrive with wasp energy and fly memory. They pock the door, skid, kiss my ribs, and forget what they were for. Once, the first time, storms lived in those shots and I thought lightning had learned to hate me personally. Tonight they're just weather, and I am a building that has outlived roofs. Hinge scream, door yawns, red strobe floods the corridor into a butcher's watercolor. Sprinklers give up and weep. Two officers stand their ground because their fathers taught them where the ground is. I step around their courage like a good guest. One lowers his weapon when he meets the color in my eyes. That lowering will be the smartest thing he does all year. I pass him like weather. He drops to a knee, not in worship, but because size asks you for space. Radios stutter into one another's mouths. Do not engage in close quarters. Footsteps try to remember stairs. A bulletin board holds a paper. Work, program, orientation, pin curling from humidity, corner fluttering as if the paper is clapping for anyone still alive enough to read. The yard gate is chain link bolted to steel. Rebar hums when I lean, a note I can taste. Metal abandons pride and tries honesty on. I shoulder through. Razor coils gleam like obedient sharks waiting for commands no one will give. I jump. They lick my belly with cold manners and take nothing. Searchlight pins me to the rain for one fresco. Wolf under red moon, mud flinging off claws, muzzle lifted to drink electricity. Then motion returns, and I am inevitability pounding toward a river that pretends to forget. Not fast. I don't run fast. I run like a verdict no one wants to hear read aloud. Why the river? Because sinks gossip and rivers keep their counsel. Because water forgives in the only way that matters. It wears you down. Because I promised someone who loved me that when the sky put its hands in my chest and turned my heart like a knob, I would go where the world runs by itself and does not care what you are. Under the truss bridge the world hushes. Rivets sweat. Girders sing long, low notes. Rain deepens their throats. Someone wrote, "No gods, no masters" in spray paint that wanted to be brave. Someone crossed out gods and wrote moons in a hand that wanted to be clever. Wrong in the right direction. Rule 1, do not linger. Rule 2, if you linger, pick a place older than your cuffs and let it teach you posture. On the far bank, trees crouch like an audience trying to remember whether they paid to be entertained or warned. The shack squats, where it always has. Tin, roof like dull knives, door held on by argument, window committed to its mistake. She sat there once, the woman with the chainmail laugh, and put a jar of peaches in my palm. The syrup was August, even though the night was January. She pressed her hand to my chest and said the heart is a door. I asked what it opens to, and she said that's the wrong question. If it starts, she told me, run to the water. I do, Dee. I do. A searchlight drags along the reeds. I slide into the mud until the mud changes its mind about where its edge is. Dogs will hate this scent. They will plant their feet and negotiate with the universe until the handler understands that obedience is not wisdom. I breathe mud, copper, rain, ledger taste. Names walk up my throat. Warden, doctor, priest, builders of mercy on the wrong side of doors. The legend says the red moon is a tax collector. It comes for what you took with your teeth. The legend is half a sermon. The red moon is an auditor. It opens your books and says, explain this line. Howls step down the ridge like a staircase. Not police, not wolves, not wolves. Kin is a lease you signed for the night with your better hand shaking. I didn't invite them, the color did. The shack exhales my weight. Tin cup. Broken stove. Bible swelled with damp so the pages curl like tongues that forgot how to lie. A horseshoe hung upside down so the luck drips onto the floor and no one slips in it. A child's red scarf folded on a nail like a sentence paused at the worst word. I know the scarf. I shouldn't. I do. They arrive like weather, the door choosing a new idea about open, the room changing its temperature to fit their breath. One with a mane like winter wheat singed at the ends, one with a face that maps accidents into doctrine. One small, bright-eyed, a leather ledger tucked under an arm like a pet he trusts to bite. Brother, the small one says. Kinship for rent, pay now, no refunds. Town's awake, says the main. We can make it clean if we run together. He outlines the tithe, one perimeter run, one engineered glimpse for the town to fear without bleeding. No bodies, no screams that go past the first fence. Fear paid into soil like coins. The sheriff keeps his sleep and his soul. The moon checks her books and, barely satisfied, goes scratch her itch somewhere else. The small one opens the ledger. Columns, paid, owed, audited. Ink the color of old scabs. The pack believes in math because math doesn't change when you point at it. Fear is not a tax, I say. It's a debt that breeds in basements while you pretend to feed it pennies. The scarred one snorts because agreement is dangerous in front of witnesses. Whose books, then? The small one asks, almost gentle. I turn my muzzle toward yard lights. Chapel window, infirmary glass. Architects, I say. Men who thought sunlight could cure. Men who thought Latin could tame a hunger into a diagnosis. Men who put a blessing on iron because a blessing doesn't file paperwork when it fails. Dangerous math, the main says. Honest math, my bones reply. They step aside the way a pack does when it wants to see if your river will drown you or make you clean. If I live, I'm fire story. If I die, I'm underlined, carpet cleaner feigning. Virtue, certificates like teeth in polite gums. A magnet over a stale fridge that reads, Monday is a state of mind, in the voice of a cheerful hostage taker. The warden's office stands ajar, a family photo face down as if privacy could rescue anybody. The blinds half open like a flirtation with catastrophe. He's here, eyes rubbed raw, tie hanging like a truce flag no one respects. You shouldn't be able, he tells the air, as if physics were customer service. Sunlight reduces incidents, he says, dragging an old argument into this new weather. You gave the moon a key, I say, and watch it fit the lock behind his tongue. He sets his palm on the desk like an oath that forgot its words. He takes the plastic wand from the blinds and snaps it. He opens every slat, lets the red walk across his carpet like a verdict in expensive shoes. I don't touch him. He says I did this. The words sit heavy on the floor like a badge no longer on the job. Ledger note, confessed, amended, not absolved. The infirmary hums the way stainless always hums when it thinks it's clean enough. The doctor writes by generator light, spectacles, fogged at the edges like mercy that's still working. You are ill, not evil, he tells the chart, because belief needs audience. I asked you to teach me not to hurt anyone, I say, and you gave me names to call myself and thought syllables could house me. He touches the small cross at his chest, not as a blade, as a map back home. He looks at the window, at the roll of black paper at his hands. Tape, peel, stick, tape. Words are fine, I tell him. Tonight we pay with deeds. Ledger note, language back in its drawer. Hand finds a hammer, even if it only knows the hammer's shadow. The chapel waits like a throat trying to swallow a wrong-sized pill. Plastic ferns do their best. The priest's collar is open. His eyes are salt-burned. I tell him he blessed iron. He tells me he blessed hope. I tell him hope doesn't need cuffs. He clicks the window latch closed, like a man who finally learned which way the door swings. He drags a table against it because humans move furniture when they need the world to feel heavier. There's a difference between boundaries and cages, he says. For once the truth fits both of us. 3 men, 3 entries. None bled. The moon, insulted, licks her teeth. I prefer insult to blood. Back to the bridge, ibs against sky. Rain fattens and adds weight to every sentence. The pack watches where metal sings. Did she accept your plan? The main asks, meaning the red. She's considering, I say. And the small one holds his ledger like a child, and a shield. I pick up a chain thicker than promises and wrap it around my chest and the beam until breath has to schedule appointments. A monster can choose, I say, and my shoulder warms as if a little fire starts behind the muscle to test me. Boots thunder on the deck. A young guard slips because adrenaline rewrites physics. He goes over. He hits a lower beam with a sound like a prayer that lost the line. The river opens its black throat because the river is old and unromantic and always hungry. I move. The chain goes taut and pours iron into my ribs. The padlock screams. A link that looked righteous remembers February steel and fails like a man who worked through lunch. I catch the boy by the jacket and hook him to the ladder rung. He coughs up water and apology. I didn't, he says. I know, I answer. Most of what hurts us never meant to. The pack stands very still and lets the rain decide who anyone is. The small one opens the ledger to a blank page and writes a new column. Choice underlines it once, the underline with edges. Verdict delivered. The main says. I don't howl. I let the river take the part of me that would have watched the boy go. Dawn peels night off the sky like old tape. Red thins to bruise, bruise to milk. Sirens embarrass themselves into silence. The pack fades into pine and argument. I walk back to the prison because this is a story about walking back. A red scarf flutters on the razor wire like a stubborn tongue. I leave it to speak what I don't need to. At the gate, the sergeant holds his hands ready for either a newborn or a grenade. The warden stands behind him, eyes dry only because he used them up earlier. The priest carries a toolbox with bolts like blunt prayers. The doctor carries a gallon of paint black as a closed eye and a roller wrapped tight. No weapons, soft cuffs, because someone learned one sentence and is hungry for the next. We walk to my cell together like men carrying a door through a narrow hall. Inside, the slit window tries a last grin and fails. The warden climbs a stool, then steps down and lets the priest measure because pride is shorter than mourning. The doctor stirs paint until the skin on top dissolves and gives itself back to the hole. The smell climbs the ladder of my nose, rung by rung, and sits down in my head like a heavy cousin. The first hammer strike rings down the block like a bell, calling a town to a wedding it thought it couldn't afford. Plate meets wall, anchors, bite. Wet black swallows the last thread of bright, and the room becomes a held thing, not a threat. We work until the priest's wrist clicks, until the doctor's thumb cramps, until the warden's hands blister, and he says good through his teeth and lifts again. When it is done, I take a nail from the broken chain and etch low, where a knee will touch it when kneeling, where a hand finds it in the dark and knows the shape of the rule. Never give the moon a view. We wipe flecks of paint with rags that used to be shirts and catch our breath as if breath is a late train we almost missed. The sergeant brings coffee. It tastes like victory's cousin. The young guard sits on a bench with a bandage on his temple and a cup between both hands like a small animal that needs warming. He looks at me and doesn't look away. Courage has many volumes. That one reads truest. I lie on the cot. The new plate sighs as it cools. My bones fold back into their sleeves with the honesty of tired men going home. The ache is clean. My mouth tastes like pennies and promise. The red dot in the corner returns to pretending it's a heartbeat, and I let it. I think of my grandmother clapping twice at a sky too bright and saying, "Don't stare at what can pull you. Come inside and let the door have some weight." I think of a dog who will plant himself tonight and save a man by refusing the track. I think of the priest, newly careful with the difference between blessing and locking. I think of the warden finding the broken blind wand in his trash and for once throwing it away because he understands that some relics belong to the night that earned them. If you are still with me, then the ledger already has your name. Subscribe before the next red moon. Walk with me when it rises again. There is a corridor inside me with old light bulbs and peeling paint where the first moon waits behind a door that won't stay shut. I walk that hall sometimes when the cell is quiet. I smell hay and iron. I hear a radio playing far away in a kitchen where a woman hums to a song she will never learn the words to. I am a boy with a split lip from a fight I didn't start and a secret I didn't ask to keep. The window is open a hand's width because heat makes fools of us all. The moon peeks in like a nosy aunt. My knuckles pop like corn, my teeth dare me. My spine counts backwards to a number I don't know how to write. I put my hand against the floor to stop the world from tilting, and the floor tells me a story that ends with blood, and my mother's hands shaking, and a dog barking itself hoarse outside because it knows. I learned that night what doors are for. Not to keep things out, to keep what you love in while it changes. Years later, a war gives me other words for the same moon. There are nights when men howl in languages I never learned, and the dust glows as if the ground remembers volcano. I sit behind a hummed engine and study my hands, like they might propose a better future if I give them time. The sky is a bare wire. The moon puts a red circle around a hill and calls me there, and I go and I come back with silence lodged in me like shrapnel. I go to the sheriff before my silence sprouts teeth, and I give him my wrists. He doesn't ask why. He grew up under this bridge. He knows what the river does for secrets and what it refuses. There will be another red. There will be men who argue sunlight is salvation, and women who tape paper over windows because they understand that night is a person who knocks politely before it kicks. There will be a chain that holds, because a hand that once broke chains remembered the sound a young guard made when the river climbed into him and chose a different noise. There will be a pack counting columns and a page that says, choice, underlined and smudged by a thumb that believes in new math. They said no one could break out. They were wrong. Doors are easy, promises are hard. Tonight I broke the wrong promise, the one fear made me sign, and tightened the right one until it fit my ribs like armor. Tonight the moon didn't get paid, in blood. Tonight the river forgot a secret on purpose and called it mercy. Tonight a wall chose me back. I press my palm to the plate. The metal is cool, ignorant in the holy way a good wall should be. I don't ask it to hold. I thank it for choosing to. At Whispering Narratives, we don't pretend doors are honest. We keep them that way. If you made it through this audit, pay courage, pay clicks, keep the window dark, never give the moon a view.